This is the Sci-Fi Trading Channel. Today we are about to go on a journey into the depths of trading psychology. We take you into the darkness that is less commonly discussed and then bring you out on the other side with practical knowledge and advice that you can start applying today. Sit back, relax, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let's dive in. Part 1, the illusion of control. Imagine, it's late at night, the house is quiet. Your only light is the glow of the screens in front of you. Candles flicker red and green. The market seems alive, like a living, breathing entity. Your pulse quickens as you watch the charts, and without even realizing it, you feel like you're not just watching anymore. You're part of the action. Your brain whispers, if I just make the right move right now, I can turn it around. I can take control back. I can bend this chart to my will. This is the seductive illusion that traps almost every trader at some point. The illusion that you, sitting in your home office or hunched over your laptop in a coffee shop, can control the outcome of a market that's fueled by millions of participants, billions of dollars, and forces far bigger than any one person. But here's the brutal truth. You don't control the market. You never did. You never will. The market doesn't know you exist. It doesn't care that you've had 3 losses in a row, that you need to pay rent, that you're desperate for this next trade to work out. It doesn't care about your story, your effort, or your belief in yourself. The market is chaos. It is randomness dressed up as order. And the harder you try to force it into your box, the more it pushes back. This is the dark side of trading psychology. The desperate, never-ending human need to control something that cannot be controlled. And until you face this, you'll stay stuck in the cycle that swallows most traders alive. Why surface advice doesn't work. You've heard all the usual advice. Stay disciplined. Control your emotions. Stick to your plan. It sounds good. It sounds clean. It sounds like the kind of wisdom you should tape to your monitor. But let's be honest, has telling yourself to stay disciplined ever actually stopped you from clicking the button too early? Has repeating control emotions ever silenced the pounding in your chest when price is rushing toward your stop loss? Of course not. That's surface level psychology. It's motivational wallpaper. It looks nice, but it doesn't actually hold the house together. The real psychological battle in trading isn't fought on the surface. It's buried deep in the subconscious, in instincts, in beliefs, in the very architecture of how the human brain processes uncertainty. And this is where Mark Douglas, one of the few people who dedicated his career to studying trading psychology, uncovered the truth that most traders never see. The hidden enemies. Douglas identified 3 invisible enemies that sabotage traders again and again. They're not emotions themselves. They're not a lack of discipline. They're far more subtle and far more dangerous. Enemy number 1, belief filters. Your brain doesn't present you with raw reality. It presents you with a filtered version of reality, filtered through your beliefs about what's important, what's dangerous, what's safe. Maybe you believe early morning moves are just noise. Maybe you believe a breakout only matters if volume explodes. Maybe you believe every dip must bounce. Those beliefs act like noise-canceling headphones, cutting out data that doesn't fit your model of the world. So when the market offers opportunities outside those beliefs, you literally don't see them. Not because they're not there, but because your mind edits them out in real time. Enemy number 2. Randomness resistance. The human brain is a pattern-seeking machine. That rustle in the bushes, it might be the wind, or it might be a predator. Better to assume it's danger. That survival instinct kept us alive for millennia. But markets don't operate on neat, predictable patterns. Even with a solid edge, outcomes are distributed randomly. That means you can have 5 losers in a row and still be completely on track. You can have 10 winners in a row and still be just 1 trade away from giving some back. But your brain hates that. It wants cause and effect. It wants predictability. So when randomness shows up, as it always does, your brain resists. You start forcing patterns that aren't there, tweaking systems that don't need tweaking, or skipping setups because the last few didn't work. Enemy number 3, identity attachment. This is the most dangerous enemy of all. When your self-worth is tied to your P&L, every trade becomes a test of who you are. A win makes you feel brilliant. A loss makes you feel worthless. And when your ego is on the line, rules go out the window. You'll hold losers longer than you should just to avoid admitting you're wrong. You'll take profits too early just to lock in the feeling of being right. You'll avoid trades altogether after a bad streak because you can't handle another blow to your identity. No strategy can survive that kind of emotional pressure. Why this matters? Here's why you need to see this clearly. If you never confront these hidden enemies, you'll stay locked in the same destructive loop. Find a new strategy. Get excited. Take a few trades. Hit a losing streak. Panic. Abandon the system. Start over with a new one. Sound familiar? Most traders spend years repeating this cycle. Not because they're stupid, not because they're lazy, but because they're blind to the real battle they're fighting. They think they're battling the market, but they're really battling their own psychology. This is why most traders fail, and it's why those who succeed almost always talk less about setups and more about mindset. The market isn't your enemy. The market is just an arena. The real opponent is inside your head, setting the stage. So what does this mean for you? Sitting at your desk, wondering why the same mistakes keep repeating? It means the answer isn't another indicator. It isn't another guru's strategy. It isn't a secret pattern. The answer is learning how to dismantle the illusions and traps your brain sets for you. It's about rewiring your relationship with uncertainty, with risk, with randomness itself. That's what this entire journey is about. Over the next hours, we're going to dive into the darkest corners of trading psychology, the fears, the illusions, the attachments, and we're going to expose them for what they are. Because once you see them clearly, you can finally stop fighting battles that can't be won and start aligning yourself with the way markets actually work. By the end of this, you won't just understand why most traders fail. You'll understand exactly how to step out of that cycle and finally give yourself a real chance at consistency. Part 2, Fear, the oldest enemy. Fear has been with us since the beginning of time. Long before trading accounts, stock charts, and candlestick patterns, fear was the force that kept our ancestors alive. Fear told us not to walk too close to the edge of a cliff. Fear made us freeze at the sound of rustling in the bushes. Fear taught us that fire could burn and predators could kill. Fear kept us alive in the wild. But in the markets, fear can kill you in a different way. The two faces of fear. Fear shows up in trading in two forms: the fear of losing and the fear of missing out. Both are rooted in the same thing, your brain treating uncertainty like danger. When you take a trade, there's always uncertainty. No outcome is guaranteed. The logical part of you knows that. It knows losses are part of the game. But the primitive part of your brain doesn't care about logic. It sees uncertainty as threat. It reacts the same way it did when survival was on the line. That's why your palms sweat, why your chest tightens, why you hesitate to click the button, or why you close out early. It's not because you're weak or stupid, it's because your brain is wired to treat uncertainty as danger. The trader who froze. Let me tell you about Alex. Alex studied charts for months before taking his first live trades. He had a system, he had rules, he had done all the homework. But when it came time to actually place a trade, he froze. His mouse hovered over the buy button, but he couldn't click it. His chest tightened. His mind raced with what ifs. What if it fails right after I enter? What if I lose money? What if I prove to myself I can't do this? By the time he pushed through and entered, the move was already halfway over. He missed the best entry, panicked at the first red candle, and exited with a small loss. That loss confirmed his fear. See, you can't do this. But the loss wasn't the real problem. The fear was. Alex's fear didn't protect him. It sabotaged him. It turned a valid trade into hesitation, and hesitation into loss. The trader who chased. Now let's look at Maya. Maya hated missing out. She could sit for hours watching charts, but the moment she saw a move happen without her, fear kicked in. Not fear of losing, but fear of being left behind. If a stock spiked 3% in minutes, Maya's brain screamed, "You're missing it! Get in now before it's too late." So she chased, again and again. She bought tops, she sold bottoms, she jumped in at the worst possible times. Not because her system told her to, but because fear of missing out convinced her she had to act. For Maya, being flat felt unbearable. She equated sitting on the sidelines with failure, so she forced herself into trades she had no business taking. Fear in disguise. The dangerous part about fear is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't shout, "I'm fear, I'm here to ruin your day." It disguises itself as logic, as wisdom, as experience. Fear tells you, wait for confirmation, when really you're just avoiding risk. Fear tells you, this setup doesn't look right, when really you're afraid of another loss. Fear tells you, just give it a little more room, when really you're afraid to be wrong. Fear isn't always panic. Sometimes it's subtle hesitation. Sometimes it's over-analysis. Sometimes it's tinkering with rules endlessly, always searching for certainty that doesn't exist. Why fear persists? Here's the truth. You can't get rid of fear. It's hardwired. Your brain evolved to treat uncertainty as danger, and trading is nothing but uncertainty. Every trade you take is a step into the unknown. Every outcome is unpredictable in the short term. That's why new traders feel fear so intensely. They're stepping into a domain where their survival instincts are constantly triggered. But here's the catch. Fear may be hardwired, but your response to it is not. That part can be rewired. Reframing fear. Mark Douglas taught that fear in trading comes from two things: the illusion that you can control the outcome, the belief that being wrong means something about you. Think about that. If you truly believed the outcome of any one trade was random, and if you truly believed being wrong didn't matter, what would there be to fear? Nothing. Fear feeds on two illusions: control and identity. Once you cut off its food supply, fear starves. Practical example, the coin flip. Imagine flipping a coin 100 times. You know the odds, roughly 50% heads, 50% tails. You accept that streaks will happen. You might get 5 tails in a row, maybe even 7, but you don't panic because you know over 100 flips, it evens out. Now imagine that same logic applied to your trading system. If you have an edge, it plays out over a large number of trades, not the next one. But most traders don't think like that. They panic after 3 losses. They fear the next flip. The coin doesn't care about your fear. Neither does the market. The edge plays out only if you keep flipping. The cost of fear. Fear costs traders more than money. It costs them clarity. Fear makes you hesitate on entries. Fear makes you exit winners too soon. Fear makes you hold losers too long. Fear makes you abandon your plan right before it would have worked. The market doesn't punish you for losing trades. It punishes you for inconsistent execution. And nothing creates inconsistency faster than fear. Moving through fear. So how do you handle fear? Not by eliminating it, but by reframing it. Normalize uncertainty. Start by accepting that uncertainty isn't danger. In trading, it's the environment. It's normal. It's expected. Shrink the risk. Trade small enough that your brain doesn't panic. If you can't take a loss calmly, your size is too big. Pre-accept the loss. Before every trade, mentally rehearse the loss. See it hit your stop. Feel the disappointment. Then move on. If you've already felt it, it loses its power. Focus on process, not outcome. Success is taking clean trades according to plan, not whether this one wins. The trader who transformed. Let's come back to Alex. Remember how fear paralyzed him? He made one simple shift. Before every trade, he forced himself to say out loud, if this loses, nothing is wrong. This is the cost of doing business. At first it felt fake, but over time his brain started to believe it. Losses became less threatening. He started clicking the button on time. He started letting winners run. Alex didn't eliminate fear, he reframed it, and for the first time he experienced what it felt like to trade from a place of calm. Closing thought on fear. Fear is the oldest enemy. It's wired into your DNA. But in trading, it's not your friend. If you let it drive, fear will take you straight off a cliff. But if you see it clearly, if you strip away the illusions that feed it, you can turn fear into a signal. Not a signal about the market, but a signal about yourself. Fear means you're attaching too much meaning to a single trade. Fear means your size is too big. Fear means your ego is tangled up in the outcome. When you learn to see fear that way, it stops being a monster. It becomes a mirror. And once you learn to face that mirror, you're ready to confront the next dark side of trading psychology, the trap of randomness. Part 3, Randomness and the Gambler's Trap. Randomness is one of the most uncomfortable truths in trading. Everyone wants to believe markets follow rules, that patterns are reliable, that setups guarantee outcomes, that if you study enough charts, you'll finally be able to predict what comes next. But randomness is baked into the DNA of markets. Even if you have a genuine edge, the outcomes are distributed randomly. That means you never know if the next trade will be a winner or a loser. The problem is your brain hates randomness. It can't stand it. And this hatred of randomness creates some of the most destructive behaviors in trading. Why we resist randomness. The human mind was built to find patterns. Our ancestors survived by connecting dots. Certain clouds meant rain, certain tracks meant prey, certain plants meant poison. Seeing patterns kept us alive. So today, even when we're looking at something random, like a coin flip, our brains insist on finding order. Lose 3 coin flips in a row, and you'll start thinking, the next one has to be a win. Win 3 in a row, and you'll think, I'm on a streak. Both are illusions. Each flip is independent. Each trade is too. But when randomness collides with your pattern-seeking brain, you fall into the gambler's trap, the gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is the belief that past outcomes influence future ones in random sequences. It's why casinos thrive. A roulette wheel lands on red 5 times in a row, and gamblers swarm to bet on black, convinced it's due. But the wheel doesn't know. Each spin is independent. The odds never change. In trading, the same illusion shows up. You lose 5 trades in a row, and you think, the next one has to work. Or you win 5 trades in a row, and you think, I can size up, I'm on fire. But the market doesn't care about your streak. Each trade is independent. The probabilities reset every time. Trader example, the streak chaser. Let's talk about Daniel. Daniel had a breakout system with a genuine edge, about a 60% win rate. But Daniel couldn't handle losing streaks. After 3 losers in a row, he assumed the system was broken. He'd tweak rules, add filters, change indicators. Then, when he hit a winning streak, he'd size up aggressively, convinced he was hot. Inevitably, the next random loser would come. But now it was oversized, wiping out weeks of gains. Daniel wasn't losing because of his system. He was losing because he couldn't accept randomness. The trader who understood randomness. And now contrast Daniel with Lena. Lena had a system with a similar edge, around 55%. But Lena approached trading like a casino. She knew the edge only revealed itself over large samples. So she made a contract with herself. She would only evaluate results in blocks of 50 trades. That meant she didn't panic after a losing streak. She didn't celebrate too much after a winning streak. She just executed her edge, trade after trade, knowing that the math would sort itself out over time. And it did. Over 50 trade blocks, her edge was crystal clear. She was profitable not because her strategy was better than Daniel's, but because she accepted randomness instead of fighting it. Why randomness hurts so much. Here's why randomness is so painful for traders. It strips away the illusion of control. When you lose 3 trades in a row, you want a reason. You want to believe you did something wrong so you can fix it. But sometimes there is no reason. Sometimes you just got tails 3 times in a row. When you win 5 trades in a row, you want to believe it means you've leveled up. But sometimes you just got lucky. Sometimes it's just variance working in your favor. Your brain wants cause and effect. The market gives you randomness. The tension between those two is what creates panic, overadjustment, and sabotage. The casino mindset. Casinos understand randomness better than anyone. They don't care if you win a hand of blackjack. In fact, they want you to win sometimes. It keeps you playing. What they care about is the edge over thousands of hands. They know the probabilities, and they know that as long as the game is played long enough, the math guarantees their profits. That's how you need to think as a trader. Your edge plays out over large samples. Not in the next trade, not in the next 5 trades, over hundreds, over thousands. That's what separates professionals from amateurs. Amateurs obsess over the next outcome. Professionals obsess over process and sample size. The emotional side of randomness. Of course, knowing this intellectually is different from living it emotionally. When you're in a losing streak, it feels personal. It feels like the market is out to get you. It feels like you've lost your touch. But losing streaks are not evidence that something's broken. They're evidence that randomness is alive and well. In fact, if you never experienced losing streaks, it probably means you're not taking enough trades to let your edge express itself. Here's the paradox. Losing streaks are part of proof that your system is working. Because if outcomes weren't distributed randomly, it would mean something unnatural was happening. practical drill, the 20 trade contract. One of the simplest ways to break free from the gambler's trap is to make a contract with yourself. Before you trade, say this out loud. My edge plays out over a series of trades, not in any single trade. I will judge my performance only after completing 20 trades. Until those 20 are complete, my only job is to follow my rules. This reframes your mind. It takes the weight off any one outcome. It keeps you from panicking after 3 losses or getting cocky after 3 wins. Do this consistently, and randomness loses its power to throw you off track. Randomness and illusion of control. Here's the connection back to our first theme, the illusion of control. Fighting randomness is another way of trying to control the uncontrollable. It's your brain saying, if I just tweak enough, if I just analyze enough, I can eliminate variance. But you can't. The market will always deal you losing streaks. It will always mix wins and losses unpredictably. Your job isn't to fight that, it's to flow with it, to let the randomness play out without letting it control your behavior. Closing thought on randomness. Randomness is the dark backdrop of trading. It's what makes the game possible in the first place. If outcomes weren't random, edges wouldn't exist. If edges didn't exist, profits wouldn't either. So the very thing you hate is the thing that allows trading to work at all. Accepting randomness isn't just about staying calm. It's about aligning yourself with reality. It's about trading the market as it is, not as you wish it to be. When you finally accept that every trade is independent, that outcomes are distributed randomly, you free yourself from one of the deepest traps in trading psychology. And once you accept randomness, you're ready to face the next dark truth. The way your ego and identity get tangled up in every tick of your P&L. Part 4. Identity and ego attachment. If fear is the oldest enemy and randomness is the most uncomfortable truth, then ego is the most seductive trap. On the surface, trading looks like numbers, charts, and setups. But beneath all that, for many traders, it becomes something much more personal. It becomes a test of identity, a scoreboard for self-worth, a referendum on whether you're smart, capable, and worthy. This is the dark side of ego in trading. When your identity gets tangled up with every tick of your P&L, why ego shows up. Think about the culture we live in. From the time we're young, we're rewarded for being right. At school, you get grades for correct answers. At work, you get promoted for making good decisions. In sports, you're celebrated for winning. So when you step into trading, it feels natural to assume the same rules apply. If you're right about the market, you're smart. If you're wrong, you're dumb. Wins mean you're good, losses mean you're bad. But the market doesn't operate on that framework. The market doesn't reward being right. It rewards having an edge and executing it consistently, regardless of individual outcomes. That's why ego is such a dangerous trap. It convinces you the game is about something it's not. Trader example, the win-addicted ego. Let's look at Marcus. Marcus was a brilliant guy. Ivy League education, top consulting job, used to being the smartest person in the room. When he came to trading, he assumed success would come quickly. And at first, it did. He had a few early wins and felt unstoppable. But then the losing trades started coming. Every loss felt like a personal attack. Instead of being just part of variance, it felt like evidence that Marcus wasn't as smart as he thought. So he started fighting back. He doubled down on trades. He moved stops further away, unwilling to admit he was wrong. He avoided setups that didn't look perfect, because he couldn't stomach being wrong again. The result? Inconsistency, missed trades, oversized losses. Not because his system didn't work, but because his ego couldn't handle being wrong. Trader example, the detached ego. Now contrast Marcus with Elena. Elena approached trading differently. She saw it not as a test of her intelligence, but as a business. Each trade was like an expense receipt. Some made money, some didn't, but none of them defined her as a person. When she lost, she didn't spiral into self-doubt. She just recorded the trade, noted what happened, and moved on. When she won, she didn't feel brilliant. She didn't rush to size up or brag about her insight. She just executed her plan again. Over time, Elena's equity curve was smoother, not because she was smarter, but because her identity wasn't on the line. The identity trap. Here's why ego attachment is so destructive. When your identity is tied to outcomes, your behavior warps. You'll hold losers longer than planned because closing the trade feels like admitting failure. You'll take profits too soon. Because locking in a win feels like protecting your ego. You'll avoid trades after a losing streak because you can't handle being wrong again. The irony is that by trying to protect your ego, you sabotage your performance. The more you need to be right, the harder it becomes to trade well. The illusion of smart trading. Ego doesn't just show up in wins and losses, it shows up in the illusion of control. Traders often equate complexity with intelligence. They believe the smarter they are, the more indicators they use, the more complicated their strategy, the better their results will be. But trading isn't an intelligence test, it's an execution test. The market doesn't care how complex your system is. It cares whether you can execute it with discipline. Some of the most profitable traders in history used shockingly simple systems. What separated them wasn't brilliance, it was humility. The humility to follow rules without needing to prove themselves smarter than the market. Practical drill, the identity stop loss. Most traders know to set a stop loss on their charts, but very few ever set a stop loss on their identity. Here's how it works. Before every trade, remind yourself out loud. If this trade loses, nothing about me changes. I am the same trader, the same person, with the same potential as before. This trade is not me. It's just one outcome in a long series. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Because when you separate your identity from the outcome, you free yourself to execute without fear. Losses stop being judgments on your worth. They become just another line in the journal. The shift from outcome to process. The biggest shift you can make as a trader is moving from outcome-based identity to process-based identity. Most traders ask themselves, did I make money today? But that question ties your self-worth to outcomes you can't control. A better question is, did I follow my process today? If you took clean trades, sized correctly, accepted risk, and honored your stops, then you succeeded, regardless of whether you made or lost money. That shift rewires your relationship with trading. It turns every day into a chance to win because winning is defined by process, not outcome. The surgeon analogy. Think about a surgeon. If a surgeon follows every protocol perfectly during an operation, but the patient still dies due to complications, does that mean the surgeon is a failure? Of course not. It means medicine involves uncertainty. The same is true in trading. You can follow every rule, execute perfectly, and still take a loss. That doesn't mean you're a bad trader. It means trading involves randomness. Surgeons define success by process. Traders must do the same. The quiet power of detachment. When your ego is detached, something interesting happens. Trading becomes quieter. The emotional highs and lows flatten. Wins feel satisfying, but not euphoric. Losses sting, but only for a moment. Instead of emotional roller coasters, you get stability. Stability breeds consistency, and consistency compounds into profits. That's the paradox. By caring less about being right, you give yourself the best chance to actually make money. Closing thought on ego. Ego is seductive. It tells you trading is about proving yourself, about being right, about showing how smart you are, but that's an illusion. Trading doesn't care about your ego. It doesn't reward intelligence. It rewards discipline, humility, and consistency. The sooner you separate who you are from what your P&L says, the sooner you'll break free from one of the darkest traps in trading psychology. Because only then can you stop defending your identity and start executing your edge. And once you've loosened ego's grip, you're ready to learn the tools and frameworks that can help you survive the psychological game long enough to thrive. Part 5. Frameworks for Survival. We've talked about fear, we've talked about randomness, we've talked about ego. These are the three forces that pull most traders into failure. But here's the good news. You don't have to be helpless against them. Mark Douglas spent decades not just describing the psychological traps of trading, but mapping out ways to work with them. His drills and frameworks are deceptively simple, but if you actually use them, they change the way your brain relates to risk, uncertainty, and outcomes. This section is about survival, about building habits that protect you from yourself long enough for your edge to play out. The belief audit. We'll start with the belief audit. Remember the first hidden enemy, belief filters. The idea that your brain shows you the market not as it is, but as your beliefs allow you to see it. The problem is, most traders never examine those beliefs. They just operate as if their filters are reality. The belief audit changes that. Here's how it works. Every morning, before you trade, Take out a blank sheet of paper. At the top, write, what must be true for me to feel confident taking this trade? Set a timer for 2 minutes, then brain dump every answer that comes up. Don't censor yourself. Don't try to be right. Just write. You'll get answers like, volume needs to be above average. It shouldn't be too early in the session. The broader market should be trending. The chart should look clean. Now here's the key. Circle anything that's not explicitly written in your trading plan. Those circled items are belief filters. Invisible rules you've been following without even realizing it. Those hidden beliefs are costing you money. They filter out valid setups. They make you hesitate. They warp your perception of reality. By identifying them, you can separate actual rules from unconscious filters. Trader example, hidden filters. Take Peter, for example. Peter had a solid system. On paper, it should have been profitable, but in practice, he was barely breaking even. When he did the belief audit, he discovered something shocking. He had 12 unwritten rules he didn't even know he was following. Things like, never trade within 15 minutes of the open. Avoid trades if the sector ETF is red. Skip setups if I've already had 2 losers that day. None of those rules were in his actual system. They were just beliefs his brain had created to keep him safe. Once Peter recognized them, he was able to strip them away. Within a month, his results flipped from flat to plus 18%. Not because his system changed, but because his filters stopped blocking trades. The 20-trade contract. Next is the 20-trade contract. This one is about randomness, about training your brain to stop overreacting to small samples. Here's how it works. Before you start a new block of trading, make a contract with yourself. It goes like this. My edge expresses itself over a series of trades, not individual outcomes. I will judge my performance only after completing the next 20 qualified setups. Until those 20 trades are complete, my job is simple. Identify valid setups, size correctly, and honor my stops. Everything else is noise. That's it. Simple, but incredibly powerful. Because once you commit to evaluating only after 20 trades, you stop panicking after 3 losses. You stop celebrating too much after 3 wins. You stop judging the system prematurely. You give randomness space to play out. And that's where your edge finally gets to show itself. Trader example, the tweaker versus the committed. Look at Sam and Jordan. Sam judged his system after every 5 trades. If he hit a losing streak, he tweaked his rules. If he hit a winning streak, he sized up. His results were chaotic because he was always reacting to noise. Jordan made the 20-trade contract. She refused to judge until 20 trades were logged. That gave her stability. It gave her consistency. And when she did evaluate, she could see her edge clearly. Same strategies, 2 different approaches. Jordan thrived. Sam spun his wheels. The difference was patience with randomness. The risk acceptance ritual. Now let's talk about fear. Most traders think they've accepted risk when they set a stop loss. But setting a stop is just mechanical. It's not psychological. True risk acceptance means being completely okay with losing that money before you ever click the button. To get there, Douglas recommended a risk acceptance ritual. Before every trade, read this out loud. I choose to take this risk. If this trade results in a loss, nothing is wrong. My system is not broken. My future is not in jeopardy. This loss is simply the price I pay to express my edge in an uncertain environment. I accept this outcome completely. Now here's the test. If you can't read that calmly, your size is too big. Shrink it until you can. Because if you can't psychologically accept the loss, you'll sabotage yourself the moment the trade moves against you. Trader example, the bargainer. Think about Ravi. Ravi thought he was disciplined. He always set a stop loss. But whenever price neared his stop, something strange happened. His brain started bargaining. Maybe I'll give it a little more room. This setup is too good to stop out. I'll just move it 50 cents lower. Inevitably, those trades turned small planned losses into large unplanned ones. When Ravi started using the risk acceptance ritual, he realized the truth. He hadn't really accepted risk at all. He'd been tolerating it mechanically, not embracing it psychologically. Once he sized down to a level where he could read the ritual without tension, everything changed. Stops became easier to take. Losses felt routine instead of catastrophic. His equity curve stabilized. Clean process executions, CPES. Now let's talk about process. Most traders measure success in dollars. I made $500 today. I lost $300 this week. But measuring only by money is dangerous because money is random in the short term. A better way is to track clean process executions, or CPES. A CPE is any trade where you took a valid setup from your system sized according to your plan, pre-accepted the risk, honored your stop or target without interference, journaled both the technicals and your emotional state. Notice what's not on that list. Whether the trade won or lost, CPES separate process from outcome. They give you a way to feel successful even when you lose money, as long as you followed your process. Trader example, from chaos to consistency. Clara used to judge herself only by P&L. If she made money, she felt smart. If she lost, she felt stupid. Her mood and her discipline swung wildly with every outcome. When she started tracking CPES, everything shifted. One week, she had 8 losing trades in a row. Normally, that would have sent her spiraling, but 7 of those were clean process executions. That meant 7 times she followed her rules perfectly, even if the outcomes didn't pay. Instead of despair, she felt pride. She could see she was building consistency, and eventually, the wins returned, just like the math promised. The one not taken journal. Finally, let's look at intuition. Most traders want to trade by feel. They want to trust their gut. But early on, gut feelings are usually just fear or hope in disguise. Douglas suggested a simple tool to separate real intuition from emotional noise: the one not taken journal. Here's how it works. Once a week, pick one valid setup you chose not to take. Write down why you passed. Not the logical reasons, the felt reasons. The breakout looked forced. Something felt off about the momentum. The broader context didn't feel supportive. Over time, patterns emerge. Some of those instincts turn out to be legitimate, subtle cues your brain has picked up from experience. Others turn out to be fear. By journaling, you train yourself to tell the difference. That's how intuition is developed, not by forcing it, but by tracking and refining it. Why these frameworks work. All of these tools, the belief audit, the 20-trade contract, the risk acceptance ritual, CPES, the one not taken journal, have one thing in common. They shift your focus from outcomes you can't control to processes you can. They take the energy your brain normally wastes fighting fear, randomness, and ego and channel it into systems that build consistency. They don't eliminate uncertainty. They align you with it, and that alignment is what separates professionals from amateurs. Closing thought on frameworks. Most traders spend their energy searching for the perfect strategy. But the truth is, almost any reasonable strategy can work if paired with strong psychology. The frameworks we just covered aren't glamorous. They're not exciting, but they're what allow your edge to actually play out. Without them, you'll sabotage yourself before the math has time to work. With them, you give yourself the stability to survive losing streaks, detach from outcomes, and build confidence in your ability to execute. And once you have that foundation, you're ready to look at the bigger picture, the stages of growth every trader must go through, and why most never make it past the early ones. Part 6, the stages of a trader's evolution. Trading isn't just about finding an edge, it's about becoming the kind of person who can actually execute that edge. And that doesn't happen overnight, it happens in stages. Mark Douglas often described trading as a journey of psychological evolution. You don't wake up one day with perfect discipline, unshakable risk acceptance, and intuitive feel for the market. You grow into it, you earn it. Most traders get stuck in the early stages and never progress. But if you understand the map, you can see where you are and what it takes to move forward. Stage 1, mechanical trading. The first stage is mechanical trading. Here, you follow your system like a recipe. No discretion, no gut feel, no clever adjustments. If A and B are present, you do C. End of story. This stage feels boring. It feels robotic. Your brain will resist it because it wants to be creative, to prove how smart you are. But mechanical trading is the foundation. Without it, nothing else works. The goal here is to build self-trust. Until you trust yourself to follow simple rules consistently, your brain won't let you move forward. Douglas suggested aiming for 100 trades with 90% plus rule adherence. Not pretty good, not close enough. 90% or better, that's what it takes to rewire your brain to trust yourself. Trader example, the rule breaker. Think about Chris. Chris had a solid strategy, but he always made little tweaks in the moment. This setup looks extra strong, I'll size up. or "This candle looks sketchy, I'll pass." On paper, his system was profitable. In practice, his results were chaotic. He never built consistency because he never let the system play out as written. When Chris forced himself into 100 mechanical trades, something shifted. He realized most of his tweaks were fear or ego in disguise. Without them, his results stabilized. Mechanical trading felt boring, but boring was exactly what he needed. Stage 2, subjective trading. Once you've built self-trust, you earn the right to use bounded discretion. This is stage 2, subjective trading. Here, you still follow your system, but you add predefined filters based on experience. For example, skip trades within 30 minutes of major news releases. Cut size in half when volatility is extreme. Pass on setups with less than 2R potential. The key word is bounded. These are not emotional decisions. They're predefined extensions of your rules, based on observations you've logged. This is where trading starts to feel more flexible, more nuanced, but it's only safe if you've built the discipline in stage 1. Otherwise, subjective just means random. Trader example, the boundaries. Look at Sarah. Sarah spent 6 months in stage 1 building discipline. When she moved to stage 2, she added 3 subjective filters. No trades within 30 minutes of Fed announcements. Half size when the VIX was above 30. Skip setups with unusually low sector volume. These weren't emotional calls. They were rules born from observation, and they improved her edge without compromising her consistency. Stage 2 gave Sarah flexibility, but only because she'd earned it. Stage 3, intuitive trading. Stage 3 is the holy grail, intuitive trading. This is where your brain, after thousands of repetitions, starts recognizing subtle patterns that can't easily be written into rules. The way volume behaves before a breakout, the rhythm of price around a key level, the feel of momentum in a sector. But here's the catch. Intuition only works when fear is gone. If you're still afraid of being wrong, what you call intuition is usually just anxiety in disguise. Real intuition is quiet. Fear is loud. Most traders mistake fear for insight. That's why stage 3 only comes after you've mastered stages 1 and 2. Without discipline and self-trust, intuition is just gambling. Trader example, the quiet pass. Consider David. David had 2 identical breakout setups one morning. Both looked valid according to his rules. He took the first one and made 2.5R. The second looked the same on paper, but something about it felt off. He couldn't articulate why. It was a combination of subtle cues, sector weakness, the way price had been grinding, the lack of conviction in volume. He passed. 20 minutes later, that breakout failed spectacularly. That wasn't fear. That was intuition built from thousands of hours of observation. Why most traders get stuck? Most traders never make it past stage 1. Or worse, they try to skip it. They want to trade by intuition from day 1. They want to be creative before they've learned the scales. But skipping stages is like trying to improvise jazz before you can play basic chords. It doesn't work. It just creates noise. Stage 1 feels restrictive, but it's the discipline that makes stage 3 possible. The emotional evolution. These stages aren't just about rules. They're about your relationship with uncertainty. In stage 1, you're learning to obey rules despite fear. In stage 2, you're learning to add nuance without ego. In stage 3, you're learning to trust subtle patterns without attachment. Each stage is a deeper level of comfort with randomness, risk, and loss. Practical drill, the 100 trade challenge. If you're serious about progressing, start with this. Commit to 100 trades with strict rule adherence. Track them. Journal them. Score yourself only on discipline, not money. If you can't do that, you're not ready for stage 2. This challenge builds the foundation for everything else. It's not glamorous, but it's what rewires your brain for self-trust. Closing thought on stages. Trading isn't a sprint. It's not about getting rich next month. It's about evolving through stages that transform not just your skills, but your psychology. Most traders fail because they try to shortcut the process. They want stage 3 results without stage 1 discipline. But evolution can't be skipped. If you embrace each stage fully, you'll arrive at intuitive trading naturally, not by forcing it, but by earning it. And once you've seen the full arc, you're ready for the final step, confronting the darkest truth of all, that trading will never give you control, only acceptance. Part 7: The Dark Truth and Closing Challenge. We've come a long way. We've talked about fear, randomness, ego, we've laid out the frameworks, we've mapped the stages, and now we're here at the end, the place where all of these threads tie together into the single uncomfortable truth most traders never accept. The truth is this: you will never control the market. You can control your process. You can control your risk. You can control your response, but you will never control what happens on the screen. And if you build your identity, your confidence, your happiness on outcomes you don't control, you're setting yourself up for endless frustration. The market doesn't care. This is the dark truth most people avoid. The market doesn't care about your needs. It doesn't care about your effort. It doesn't care that you've read every book, watched every video, backtested every setup. And it doesn't care that you need this win to pay bills or to prove yourself or to make up for last week's losses. The market isn't your teacher. It isn't your enemy. It isn't your friend. The market is just an arena where probabilities play out. It's cold, it's indifferent, it's merciless. And that indifference is what makes it the perfect mirror. Trading as a mirror. Here's the paradox. Because the market doesn't care, it reflects you perfectly. It reflects your fears in hesitation and early exits. It reflects your ego in oversized trades and revenge trades. It reflects your lack of discipline in rule breaking and inconsistency. Every weakness you try to hide shows up on the chart. This is why trading is so brutally honest. Other parts of life let you fake it. You can bluff your way through school, charm your way through meetings, skate by on half effort in a job, but the market doesn't let you fake anything. It exposes you. It forces you to confront yourself. The choice you face. This leads to the final choice every trader has to make. You can keep fighting the market, clinging to illusions of control, chasing certainty that doesn't exist, tying your self-worth to outcomes you don't control. Or you can surrender the illusion. You can accept that the market is bigger than you, that uncertainty is the environment, that losses are the cost of doing business. You can stop trying to control outcomes and start focusing on what you can actually control: your process, your discipline, your response. One path leads to endless frustration. The other leads to freedom. The freedom of acceptance. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's strength. When you accept that you don't control outcomes, you stop panicking when trades lose. You stop forcing trades when setups aren't there. You stop overreacting to variance. Acceptance creates calm. Calm creates consistency. And consistency is the foundation of profitability. Think about the traders who survive long enough to thrive. They're not the ones who outsmart the market, they're the ones who outlast it. They stay in the game because they accept reality instead of fighting it. The final drill: the identity reframe. Here's one last drill to carry with you. At the end of every trading day, ask yourself 2 questions. Did I follow my process? Did I accept uncertainty? That's it. Not did I make money? Not was I right? Just those 2 questions. If the answer is yes, then you won, regardless of P&L. Do this long enough and you rewire your identity. You stop being a trader who needs to win and start being a trader who executes. And that's the identity that actually makes money over time. The final story: the 2 traders. Let's close with this story. 2 traders start with the same strategy, same rules, same indicators, same entries and exits. Trader A ties his worth to every outcome. Wins make him euphoric. Losses crush him. He tweaks constantly, sizes up recklessly, avoids trades when scared. His equity curve is chaotic, and eventually, he burns out. Trader B takes the same trades, but her identity isn't tied to outcomes. She measures success by process. She accepts losses as normal. She focuses on consistency. Her equity curve is smoother, steadier. Over time, she compounds into real profitability. Same system, different psychology. That's the difference between failure and survival. Closing challenge. So here's the challenge I'll leave you with. For the next 30 days, forget about making money. Forget about outcomes. Forget about trying to control the market. Instead, focus only on what you can control. Audit your beliefs. Accept risk fully. Track your clean process executions. Commit to 20 trade blocks. Journal the trades you didn't take. Do this for 30 days, and don't judge yourself by P&L. Judge yourself by process. If you can make that shift, even for a month, you'll start to see the truth. You'll feel the difference between chasing control and embracing uncertainty. You'll start to build the identity of a real trader. the dark truth. The market won't reward your need to be right. It won't reward your intelligence. It won't reward your effort. It will reward one thing: your ability to accept uncertainty and keep executing. That's the dark truth, and the sooner you accept it, the sooner you free yourself. So the question is, will you keep clinging to control? Or will you finally let go, step into acceptance, and give yourself a real chance to win?